My name is Malcolm Wright. I've had a visceral connection to The Man Who Lived Underground ever since I first read it when I was 16 years old. And of course that connection was augmented by the fact that the author is my grandfather, Richard Wright. But I can also say that I don't have quite the same connection to any of his other works. This was really and remains the sort of the strongest reading experience and sort of the most gripping and compelling reading experience that I've had with his works, and quite possibly with any work that has come my way. The plot is simple. A black man's life is destroyed in an instant when some police officers decide to pull him off the street and accuse him of a murder that he did not commit and torture him. He escapes and takes refuge in the city sewers, where he undertakes a surreal and mind-altering journey which leads him to a fateful decision. Richard said that this work flowed from him in a way he'd never experienced before, and usually creatively that's a very good sign. But his agent and his publisher in the early 40s did not feel the same way about what he had written, and one can only imagine how they reacted to the direct and uncompromising description of an altercation between abusive police and an innocent black man at the time. That wasn't a topic for conversation in the 40s, let alone best-selling literature. But there's also the dimension of what people had come to expect from Richard, which was a naturalistic approach to describing black life in America. And here comes a work which is surreal and allegorical and with a depth, a metaphysical depth, that was probably very surprising to these publishers. So it was censored, it was rejected. Clearly it is a work of quality, and we're able to appreciate that now. So really, it was a form of censorship. And we can only hope that this missed opportunity to have this discussion about police brutality and explore it in a work of fiction, which offers unique educational possibilities and discussions around the topic in classrooms and communities. But all these years of having missed starting that conversation early, can you imagine in the 1940s, 80 years ago, where would we be today? We might not be in the same place as a nation. We may have advanced a little bit further along the long and arduous path of sort of getting over skin color. So of course there's this sense of excitement, when you have appreciated all your life something that's something of a hidden gem that was available but sort of underappreciated, and for it to explode into what I believe is its fully deserved position in Richard Wright's canon and in literature. That's a really exciting thing to witness on a personal level. But then, in a broader sense, that there's a really hopeful feeling that maybe this is symbolic of a coming of age for our society. That this work that was not able to be published 80 years ago now is welcomed in the way that it is and celebrated in the way that it is. It's one is not really allowed to hope for this type of response when one publishes a work. It would be arrogant to hope for something of this nature, and this is what has happened. So is this a sign that as a society, we have advanced? in certain ways along this road, this long road. I hope so. The theme of the outsider, the othering that takes place when we racially profile people, or look at first at the race before looking at them as people. If anything, The Man Who Lived Underground is certainly an example, a cautionary tale of what happens when we point an accusatory finger at someone partially or completely based on that race. It alienates, it literally pushes this man who's about to become a father and have a child into the sewers, where he, that becomes his reality. And I think that's a very apt choice to describe the alienation that comes from that experience. Now, our society obviously has struggled with othering. We're not very good at not doing that to people. We have a difficult history that has really in a lot of ways been based on excluding everybody non-white from the first tier of society, and that was the reality up until quite recently in law. If you make that mistake to other a portion of your population, there is still a saving grace in that when people are othered, they gain a perspective on the society that they would not be able to have if they were perfectly integrated into it. And this perspective is valuable. It's if you want to learn about yourself and not make the same mistakes over and over again, and gain the power that knowledge of self brings as a society, as a culture, then certainly you could do worse than to listen to those people who unfortunately have been pushed to the margins when they try doggedly often, and that's the case of Richard Wright and of many of our intellectuals and creative people, to shine back a reflection of the society, for better or for worse, so that we can learn from that. To make both mistakes, to other a portion of the society and then ignore the perspective that they can bring, that's a double whammy. And I think that Richard Wright agrees with an intuition that I certainly have, that to make both mistakes can be fatal in the long run to a civilization. So there's that theme of the outsider. Certainly the end of The Man Who Lived Underground, which I will not spoil, points towards this intuition that we can't afford to other people and ignore what wisdom they can bring from that experience of having been othered. I think it's going to help broaden the conversation from the many outlets that have already celebrated it. I am excited to see the discussions that arise from your readership and from around the country. It's part of a very big wave of really universal critical acclaim for the book, and it feels like it is now taking its place as an American classic. And that really fills my heart with hope. I think that at this point in time, a story which brings with it such a visceral sense of claustrophobia in the sewers, that Fred Daniels is in those sewers, and the claustrophobia that pulls you through the story, that claustrophobia that makes you emote with the fugitive, the person who's doing a prison break, or the slave who's trying to get to Canada through the Underground Railroad. that sense of being chased, of being in an oppressive environment and trying to find a measure of freedom, is a force that we need to pay attention to right now. We have a lot of problems that we need to solve. We're only really just in the past 10 years, I think, starting to face some of them head on. And, you know, there's a clock running on all of these things. And whatever pressure we can harness towards realizing those goals of solving those problems is really valuable. Thank you for underlining this work and putting it forwards, like so many outlets are doing right now. It is incredibly exciting to me that discussions are bubbling up around this book and its themes. I think that this can be an incredible therapeutic tool for our nation. I am humbled to have been included in some of these discussions, and I'm willing to continue to do so. It's exciting times.